first day I was here, I saw Dr. Ahn, and he was telling me about the stories about Beyonce and Mariah Carey agreeing to give private performances at Gaddafi family parties for $1 million. And I was absolutely horrified by this. Not by the news that third-rate pop celebrities are on the take from dictators, but by the news that Dr. Ahn had heard of Beyonce. That's your death of the Republic right there. I feel rather like a big-time Taliban scholar must have felt after special forces went through Mullah Omar's compound. You remember Mullah Omar banned music throughout Afghanistan, but after he fell from power, the US military went through his compound and discovered he had all these Rod Stewart cassettes. You know, not the Rod Stewart Slays the Great American Songbook stuff that they've been doing over at the CCA this week, but Rod Stewart in his If You Want My Body and You Think I'm Sexy period. So it's first Mullah Omar and Rod Stewart, now Dr. Ahn and Beyonce. Never glad, confident morning again. By the way, a Taliban imam recently clarified Mohammed's position on music. He said that you're allowed to listen to music, you're just not allowed to enjoy it. So Beyonce certainly qualifies as Taliban compliant. I don't want to get too controversial. I gather at the CC, was it Will Friedwald's talk? You can read it in the Collegian tomorrow. Will Friedwald's talk on the Great American Songbook. A fight nearly broke out because he played Beyonce singing Fever, the video of it, which shows Beyonce in a typical inappropriately dressed state, and some CCA supporters almost came to blows about whether it was appropriate. You know how it is when you're over at the Dow Center and they arrange a nice talk on the Great American Songbook. It's like a hockey match up in Montreal, you know, fight or it usually comes to blows. So we don't want any of that. I'm not going to play the Beyonce video. I may reenact it, but I'm in an apocalyptic mood, as I usually am on these occasions. That's the song I was singing last time I spoke to Hillsdale, and the time before. And my dirge has only gotten more mournful since then. But the night is young, so if you're planning on drinking to forget, I'll try to give you plenty you'll want to forget by the time we're through. There is no need for what is about to engulf the United States of America. Decline is a choice, and whether they fully comprehend it or not, too many Americans and almost the entirety of the political class have chosen decline, but the fact remains, decline is a choice, and if we choose not to decline, then we are certainly capable of reversing what is about to engulf us. It starts with the money, it always does. When you're spending $4 trillion per annum, but you're only taking in $2 trillion in revenue, you've no intention of paying back the difference, and everybody knows it. The Congressional Budget Office, musing on the likelihood of a sudden fiscal crisis, murmurs blandly, quote, "The exact point at which such a crisis might occur for the United States is unknown, in part because the ratio of federal debt to GDP is climbing into unfamiliar territory." But it's going to get real familiar real soon. In announcing his budget and its $1.7 trillion deficit, officially, the President of the United States presented himself as a man bold enough to take the tough decisions to restore the finances of this nation. Why, he's cutting $125 million out of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Otherwise, the $1.7 trillion deficit would be a deficit of $1.700125 trillion, and that would never do. While the president was taking these bold decisions, he essentially stiffed his own debt commission, the usual bipartisan fellows, Erskine Bowles, Alan Simpson. They produced a report dramatically titled The Moment of Truth, and they then proposed such dramatic actions as raising the age of Social Security eligibility to 69 by the year 2075. And even that's too much for the president. So let's just stick with tweaking the Great Lakes restoration budget. Harry Reid yesterday, Senator Harry Reid, he goes on the floor of the Senate and he complains about a cut to the Nevada Cowboy Poetry Festival. Tens of thousands of lives, says Senator Reid, depend on the Cowboy Poetry Festival. I didn't know we now had a federally funded cowboy poetry regime. Get along, little federally funded doggy. Oh, give me a home where a man writes a poem and American taxpayers pay. It's seldom you can get a government grant until John Boehner takes it away. What else is in the new budget? Because the cowboy poetry stuff's going back in. Because people are up in arms about this. You know, do you remember the way it used to be with cowboy poetry? These guys, they'd be sitting around the old campfire, out in the sagebrush, by the cactus. It's like eating beans in a canteen over the fire. Now, they've got purpose-built cowboy poetry centers. Purpose-built cowboy poetry centers. You don't want them back out on the prairie, sleeping under the stars. What will that do for America's cowboy poetry? What else is in the new budget? Well, there's a request from the CIA for an emergency appropriation of $513.7 million, $500 million. Great. What's that for? CIA. Is it for toppling Kim Jong-il? Taking out the Iranian nuclear program? No, it's an emergency payment to stop the CIA pension fund going bankrupt. If they don't get the money, by next year the CIA pension fund will go bankrupt with unfunded liabilities of $6.4 billion. This is the CIA, the most lavishly funded intelligence agency on the planet. And we forgive them a lot. They failed to see the collapse of the Iron Curtain coming until it happened. They failed to spot that Pakistan was going nuclear until it happened. But when an intelligence agency fails to spot that its own pension fund is bankrupt until it's happened, maybe they're in the wrong business. America is sending a consistent and very dangerous message to the world that its governing mechanisms and political culture do not allow for meaningful course correction. And without meaningful course correction, America is doomed. Now, for any nursery school toddlers here tonight, you don't have to worry about Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson raising Social Security eligibility to 69 by the year 2075, because if that's the best the smartest brains in the country can come up with, there isn't going to be a 2075, not for America. A lot of the debate has this airy-fairy, beyond the blue horizon, mid-century quality, all to do with long-term trends and other remote indicators. In fact, we'll be lucky to make it through the short term in sufficient shape to get finished off by the long term. According to CBO projections, by 2055, interest payments on the debt will exceed federal revenues. We won't need to worry about a government of the United States by that stage. By 1788, Louis XVI's government in France was spending a mere 60% of revenues on debt service, and we know how that one worked out for the House of Bourbon shortly thereafter. I wouldn't want to exaggerate the comparisons between Washington and Versailles. After all, Michelle Obama's helpful advice in these difficult times is don't let him eat cake. So So there are still critical differences between us and the ancien regime. But take your eye off the far prospect and look instead about 14 inches off your toe cap. Within a decade, the United States will be spending more of the federal budget on its interest payments than on the military. More on debt service than on the armed services. And just to clarify, we're not talking here about paying down the federal debt, just keeping up with the annual interest charges on it. Yet within a decade, the United States will be paying more in interest payments than it pays for the military. And that's not because the Pentagon is any great bargain. In 2009, the US accounted for over 43% of the world's military expenditures. So America will be spending more on debt interest than China, Britain, France, Russia, Japan, Germany, Saudi Arabia, India, Italy, South Korea, Brazil, Canada, Australia, Spain, Turkey and Israel spend on their militaries combined.